And I'm like, this isn't good. And she was just like, yeah, you got to come down.
You're alone again. I shouldn't be thinking of you, thinking of me. I know.
Hello, everyone. This is Mike from the Daily Bread comic slash podcast, talking to you today about things about my life. It's like the best introduction. I'm recording this on Father's Day, 2019, and I figured that today I just went for a walk to try to think about try to think about things, or just I let me rewind that. I do 2 miles a day. I put a challenge out, which I talked about, where I walk or run or walk and run 2 miles a day for 365 days. Today was 213. Wait, was it 213? I have to double check on that. Um, but I made a bet with my friend and said if I don't, and I just called him out of nowhere, out on Facebook. I was like, hey, I'm gonna do 2 miles a day for 365 days, and if I miss a day, then I owe a friend, Nick Barry. I just said Nick Barry. I owe him $100 every day that I don't accomplish it. So it was one hell of a way to keep my ass on track. And so yeah, so I've been doing that. But the cool thing about it is I get to just think about I get to think about things. So I like the walking aspect of it. A lot of people really they comment all the time, or not all the time, but they've made comments like, "Oh, you're so slow," or "You need to pick up your pace," and it's not the point. The point is just to be with myself for however long it takes to do 2 miles, and it's usually like 2.5 is what the loops that I've figured out. And the cool things that I've gotten from this, from just even walking, is I get to listen to audiobooks, I get to listen to podcasts, I get to just do it silently and think. I get to walk my dog for 2 miles because he's usually pretty bored in my apartment. I get to like kind of map out Raleigh and just see things that I wouldn't see if I was, riding my car, or if I was running. If I was running, I wouldn't really be paying attention. Even though I think I should probably step it up with the running just so I can work on the whole health thing with the weight. But I love it because again, I get to just be with my thoughts and I get to think about things, and that's the whole point. I don't think a lot of people give themselves time to think and reflect and help them move forward. And a friend of mine, she was telling me that she runs with no music and just silent, and um, so I've tried doing that, where I have been running and I've been doing silent, and it really helps. It's almost like active meditation, but I've been also incorporating that into walking, where if I feel super stressed out at the end of my day, I I literally just come into my apartment, throw on my shorts and shirt and shoes, and just go out and just go. And by the time I get back, my head is really clear and the headache's gone and the stress, like my chest doesn't feel like it's going to explode. And I get to just think about these things that I just get to think about my own life. And today, when I was doing it, it's a very long way around to get to this point, which is what I do. I was trying to think if I haven't put out an episode in a while because I wasn't really sure what to talk about. And today, since it's Father's Day, I wanted to talk about my dad. And he passed away October in 2013. And the reason I want to talk about it's like it's one of those things where I was on the fence about really breaking it down, because people want to listen to things that are happy, and like for me personally, I don't go to the movies to be depressed. And I've been struggling with this one because I'm trying to be as open as possible for whatever reason. That's just who I am, and be transparent and vulnerable and throw it out there on on a podcast. And it's not for a pat on the back or like I'm so sorry. It's just a form of expression and just getting this off my chest. And I was like, how can I talk about this without bumming people out? And I think one of the things I thought about before I hit record was the way that he passed away was preventable. And I think in talking about this, it's going to help people share this with their dads or people that they love, to say, hey, you should go get checked out. And a couple years ago, I wrote on Facebook on the day that he passed. No, his date, I think it was either the day that he passed or it was his birthday, because the 2 days were very within like a couple months apart from each other. And on his birthday or Father's Day, it's like you reflect. And sometimes I just don't want to post anything because then it's I don't want to be like, look at me, whatever. Here I am, feel sorry for me, and it's not the point. It's it's just I just feel like expressing like, fuck, dude, it sucks that you're gone. And a couple years ago, I wrote about how he died, and what happened was he unbeknownst to him, he had a tumor and in his colon. He had colon cancer basically, and he had a tumor that burst, and he didn't know it, and it was basically just filling his blood with poison, and he got sepsis, and he collapsed on a Sunday randomly, and he had to get rushed to the hospital, and he had no clue. And I wrote about this, and I'm going to talk about this more, but I wrote about the whole thing and just said, hey, you should probably get a colonoscopy if you're at least 50. And a buddy of mine wrote me a message after, and I met him at a networking event years ago, and he was just some random dude that was kind of off to the side. And when I go to a networking event, I like to make it very personal. Like everyone's all business and like robots, and I'm just like, let's talk about life. Why are we going to talk about business? Like business comes later. Let's like just personally get to know each other. So I walked to this guy Ray, and I was like, wow, you're doing a great job at hiding from everyone, and it just made him laugh. So me and him just built this like rapport where we it's like had a brief conversation. We kind of got that we both got it for what our sense of or what our take on got it is, and I was followed him on Facebook and just stayed in touch that way. But he read the post that I had and he said, I read it and I went to a doctor because I've been putting it off, and they actually had found that it was like he had like it was polyps or he had colon cancer, or it was like a tumor. And I'd have to find the post, the message. This is like 2015 or 14 or 15, but he was within weeks or days away from this shit going wrong, and for whatever reason it saved his life, and he's like, this post saved my life. And I it was great to hear that, and I think that within talking about this in this podcast, maybe it'll help save someone else's life, or just not even save their life, just have them go get checked out. And I'm saying this too. I just turned 40, and since I have a history of this in my family, I really should get checked out now. But the fact that it's been super slow in this freelance world that I'm in of designing and doing animation and stuff, and trying to just do a comic for fun, and I have a punk podcast. Like money isn't flowing in recently, so for me to go drop a good chunk of change to go get checked out isn't really something I can do at the moment, which I'm working on. But for people listening, it's a preventable thing. Colon cancer is a preventable thing because all you do is get a colonoscopy. They can see if there's polyps in your colon, and they can clip them out, and you could be on your merry way. I'm sure it's a little bit more complex than that, but it's that easy. And my dad hated the hospital. So anyone listening, I guess you could focus on dads or someone who's a loved one. I'm going to just talk to dads. And he hated doctors. He never liked going to the doctor's office. He took a lot of vitamins thinking that was making him healthy, and he ate everything out of a bag or a box, out of a freezer, and he ate like shit. And I wouldn't say he was the healthiest person. Not like I've been super healthy lately, but I definitely my fridge is definitely way full of, all I buy is vegetables and meat. And I'm sure someone's gonna go, oh, it's probably a problem you're eating meat. But let's stay on track here, folks. But he didn't really eat that healthy, but he could have just gone and got an exam, and he was about 62 at this point. And the cool thing about this time period was I was married at the time, and I was living in Morristown, and he had a job where he lived in Middletown, Delaware, but the job he got to travel up to New Jersey like once every couple months, and he would go to Pennsylvania. But when he went to Jersey, we'd always, like me and my ex, we'd meet him for dinner, and it was great and it was awesome. And I don't know if this was just the universe's way, or whatever being or whatever of connecting us and let us have time together before this all went down. But it was great because then that year and a half, he was coming to Jersey a lot, and I got to see him and talk to him. And our past when I was little was a little rough because my parents got divorced, and we had a patch there where we weren't really like, it's just like he didn't do any, like he wasn't a bad person. he had to work. He lived in a town that was like 30 minutes away, and I saw him like every other week. And he got married, and like that relationship between me and him and my stepmom was kind of skewed. And I'm not really going to go into that, but there was a bit of a it put a bit of a wedge in our relationship, and I kind of held on to that for up until the point where he passed away. Where sometimes he'd call on a Sunday, and I would just send it to voicemail because I was like, there's just this little tiny bit of resentment there for some reason. But when he was coming to visit, we got to see each other and talk about things. And he's a great listener. This is why I love going to visit him in Delaware. We'd get up on Saturdays and everyone would just go around the kitchen table and just talk and drink coffee and just talk for like hours about stuff. And he was such a great listener. And I try to really be that way, to genuinely listen to people. And he was so fucking good at it. And so when he'd come up, he would just ask me about things, and I would talk about like him and his job and things like that. But about so then August came around, and I luckily got to go down for his birthday, and we got to celebrate it with down at his house with like my sister and my stepmom and him and his brother and his wife, my aunt and uncle came down, and it was awesome. And then all of a sudden, I got a phone call in October. It was a Sunday, and I got a phone call from like my stepmom. She was like, "Hey, your dad, we had to take him to the hospital. You might want to come down." And I was like, "Well, I can't really break from what I'm doing because I'm working for myself. I can't just get up and go. Like I have to keep working." I'm like, "Is it serious?" She's like, "No, no, no." It just kind of played it off. And I was like, "Well, just keep me posted. If I have to come down, I'll come down." And that was on a Sunday. And then on Monday, I got a call from my aunt. It was my stepmom's sister, and she was like, "Hey, it's Kathy. You might want to come down to Delaware. Your dad's in the hospital, and I think it would be really great if I think you really should come down." And I was like, "Okay, shit, now something's up." So I ended up going down there and waited for my ex when we were married. We went down together, and I like drove straight to the hospital. No idea what's going on. It's about 2.5 hour drive, and we walk right in. And I go to the waiting room, and there's just people there. It's not just people. There was my family there from my stepmom's side, and I was just walked in. I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" So then someone's like, "Just go to the ICU. Your stepmom's there." So I go into the ICU, and I was like, I'm here for Kevin Doyle." And I walk in, and there's my stepmom in the front of this bed, and my dad's just hooked up to all this stuff and just machines, and he's out. He's just, and sleeping or just so full of morphine. And she was like, "Yeah." So basically, what happened was she was out for this walk. She was training for this mile long, or I'm sorry, this marathon walking thing for cancer. And she said she came home and he was just on the floor and was like, he had collapsed and he wasn't feeling good up that week. So the symptoms were the whole week he was just feeling a little off and just felt nauseous. And then the day before they went to a baseball game, and they had to leave early. It was like a local Delaware baseball game. And he's like, they had a hot dog, and he's like, I'm just feeling like queasy. I need to go to bed. And so then they went home, and then she got up in the morning. She's like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, go for your walk, go for your walk." So she's like, "Okay." So she went out, she came back, and he was just like, he had collapsed, and he was like, "Call the ambulance." And again, he was not a fan of doctors or hospitals, but he just knew in his heart, like, or he just knew that something was fucked. So they got to the hospital and they just rushed him in, and they told him he had a tumor that burst and he had sepsis, and they had to hook up to a machine and basically start doing like dialysis on him, or they had to like bring him back, they had to paddle him back and shit like that, and it was really fucked. And so I came in the next day after all this had happened, and he was now on a machine and he was going through. They're basically trying to clean his blood, and it was really intense. And you see movies where things like this happen, and through my life, like I have known a lot of people who have died. Like, and I mentioned that in another podcast. Another, episode, whatever. I've from a young age until that point in my life, I've known a lot of people who have died, and they've been around my age or they've been older. But I've had a giant spectrum of people that I've seen pass away. So it's like you can't say you're used to it, but it's not a shock when something happens. But when it's your parent, um, it's the thing you feared about since you were a kid. And so that was like in that moment, and then we're talking to the doctors, and they're telling us, this is the things that are going on, and it was crazy because I won't go into like super details about all the stuff about his body. It was just like kind of deteriorating through the weeks leading up to when he passed. But so we stayed there for a little bit, for a couple days, and I had to go back to New Jersey, and it came down again another weekend to see him. And he would open his eyes, but he was so drugged out on morphine just to not feel pain, and because there was a lot of things that they had to keep him under because there was just a lot of stuff going on with his body. Like they're like he can't wake up to witness or feel any of this stuff. Then um, and then it was like a month. It was like a month to the day, and they went and checked him in the morning, and he had basically had a stroke, and they were like, yeah, he's not coming out of this. So it's a crazy thing because I was at a buddy's house, and it was a Saturday, and me and my ex and my friend and his wife, we were all really close, and we partied all night, and just like drank beer and wine and bourbon and played board games. It was great, and woke up to this. My phone's ringing, and it's my stepmom. I could see it and the phone, and I'm like, this isn't good. And she was just like, yeah, you got to come down. Then we drove down to Delaware and got to be by his side. And then my sister, she drove down. My older sister, she drove down from Massachusetts. So that was I think she got there in like 3.5 hours because she was just like fucking flying. But it was surreal. It's you sit by your parents' bed, and it's me, my sisters, my stepmom, and my ex at the time, my wife at the time, and just we're there, and everyone gets to go in and say goodbye, and then it was really crazy too because on the machine there was some number that was always the good number for his heart to be at, and it was at that level. But the moment my sister walked in and she got there from Massachusetts, it just dipped. It was almost like he knew that it was like time to go. And that was super surreal. Then everyone says goodbye, and then they turn off the machine, and it was really intense. And to like witness that, but I'm grateful that I got to be there to like say goodbye. And it's just if I hadn't been there, I think it would have been pretty hard to be like right now would be harder, but to like be there and be next to him the whole time was, it wasn't great. But I'm just grateful that I got that moment. And then that was it. And then then so then we all like leave the ICU, and our family members are all there, and everyone knew that what we were going in to do, and everyone was like, let's get the fuck out of here and let's go get wasted. So we went back to their house and just had all these people over, and just like we're celebrating him, not celebrating, we're celebrating him as a person. And it's crazy what something like this does to bring people together. And it just it's so like nothing else matters at that moment in time. It's just that person, and everyone talking about them and remembering them. And it's crazy. So we stayed down there for the whole week, and the funeral was going to be on Wednesday, and it was Wednesday and Thursday. No, I can't even like fully remember. But my dad's favorite. So two things are crazy. My dad's favorite holiday was Halloween, and we ended up burying him on Halloween. And he also grew up in Massachusetts, so he was a huge Red Sox fan. And the Sox, the last time they had won a World Series, I think was 2004, where they swept the Yankees in the playoffs. Fuck yeah. then then they won, and that was the first time since 1918 or whatever is the chant that they had won the World Series. And so then they were in the series that night, the night of his wake, and we're all watching TV, and they won. So there was a knock at the door during the game, and someone had delivered it was like a note written by, it was from the Red Sox. It was like, sorry to hear about the passing of your dad. And then there was a baseball that was signed by Pedroia. And it was just like the craziest thing because they had a neighbor whose father worked at Fenway, and he told them about it, and they like sent this. And it was like the coolest. It was the coolest thing and like the worst thing because you're like the reason they're sending this is because your dad's gone. So then the Sox win the World Series, which was crazy. And then me and my sister, me and my sister Mel, we just like hugged each other and just like lost it. Now, another thing too is that when my dad got remarried, I was his best man, so I gave the best man speech. And for some reason, when I'm giving speeches, if it's like personal, I've done a few best men speeches, or yeah, I think they've all been best man speeches. If it's like for a friend, I get really emotional. Like I always cry. It's like I always just lose it towards the end. Just it's not. It just I just can't. For some reason, just get so emotional about it. And I gave his best man speech. I gave the best man speech at his wedding, and like cried, and the whole room was like, "That was so great." And I was like 13 years old, this little 13-year-old fat kid at the time. It's like just blubbering on in front of my whole family about like whatever this, my speech was. And the crazy thing out of all this crazy shit was that I gave the eulogy, and that was like again the worst thing, but the best thing because I got to say it, and then like I really like writing personal stuff for people because I really want, I don't know, like I want it to come across and really have a lot of meaning, and make it just real. And to get up there in front of everybody and give that speech was crazy because I think I wrote it the night before. So I forget when it was. I think it was the morning of the funeral. We had one last viewing of my dad. This is like so morbid. But I walked up and I had a copy. I had written a second copy of the eulogy, and I put it into an envelope. I think I put an envelope, or I just folded it and I put it into his jacket pocket, and it's like just gave him a copy of it. And it was just fucking wild. And then a couple, like hours later, whatever it was, I was like giving this speech in front of people. And then that night we ended up going back. We ended up, they called it like a reception afterwards, and everyone, all the family, and a lot of my friends came down, which was really great. And we all went to this restaurant. Everyone's just drinking, and we go back to their house, and it was just like this. The sky was just perfect. It was just like this crazy sunset, and we were all hanging out. And the one thing I realized is that there's two parties in life where the majority of your loved ones are all in the same room together at the same time. And maybe not all of them, but everyone in that room is there because they're connected to you for some reason. But that's your wedding, and that's when you have your significant other's family there and your family, and it's all the people that you love in one room. Probably some guests that you had to, like, you were probably forced to bring. No, but my wedding, actually, everyone single person there. And we all wanted them to be there. But the second one is a party you're never going to attend, and that's your funeral. Like, it's weird to think that, but it's just true. And I got that in that moment. I was like, this is the best party that he would have wanted to attend, and he just can't be here, and it sucks. And the shitty thing about all this is that it all could have been prevented if he just got a checkup. Like they could have caught it, they could have snipped it out, and he would have been fine. But sometimes life is a dick, and for whatever reason, you push things off and push things off, and sometimes life doesn't have a way of having something there to save you. And I think that if anyone got through to the end here, even though this is pretty intense, I actually had to stop a few times. I definitely edited it out because there was some pretty intense moments. But there's many things in life that can go wrong, and all I know that's in front of me is the thing that did this was colon cancer. And there's other cancers. There's also way more ways that people can, you know, prevent something from happening, but this is specifically just something that is preventable, and it happened to him. So if you are listening and you got this far, then go to your dad, go to your mom, go to someone that it's close to 50, and just say like, just go get checked out, because it's brutal to watch it. It's not, for 1 month he was on a machine or many machines, and he was like, so for the last 30 days of his life, like that's how he got to leave this world. And it's a shitty fucking thing to watch. And, all you need to do is get a checkup. So I'm just gonna leave it at that and say, go tell someone to do that, and I'm pretty sure that they'll be fine, but they should get it checked up. And I will also keep you posted on the moment where I'm able to save money to go get my checkup, which will definitely be happening soon. Go call your dad and tell them that you love them. Even if you are fighting or it's weird, you know, just fucking do it. It's it's better to go in a better direction than to have them pass away and, you know, have you not say it. I think my dad, he knew. Well, we definitely knew because we weren't on bad terms at all. But I do have a voicemail from him about a week or two before he went to the hospital, and I saved it, and it was me just not picking up the phone. Um, and I forget that if I did talk to him the week before he went to the hospital, and I can't even remember. And I remember a lot of shit, but so yeah. So I'll end it at that, and I will try to do a happier episode next time.